Hey all, hope you're doing well, you're staying safe and healthy. Wanted to do a little walkthrough video of the drums that I've got. I do gig these on a fairly regular basis. They're not all just for show. So we'll start here with the oldest kit. Picked this up a couple years ago. This is a early 70s B202. It's a 13-16-22. These are African mahogany shells, gray shimmer wrap, which unfortunately has got some splits in the 16 and the 22, but they still sound absolutely amazing. Love this kit. These are great in environments where you need to kind of keep volume to a minimum, or it's a real reflective room. The warmth of the mahogany shells helps kind of mellow out the playing in those kind of environments. Next stack over here is a Mark I Gen X from very late 90s. This is the cherry lacquer. Almost looks black in certain lighting, but it is kind of a blood red lacquer. This was one of the first series where Premier started using what was called the quick sizes, which was basically their attempt to copy what DW was doing in the mid and late 90s with their fast sizes. So these fall in between standard depths and power depths. So we got 8x10, 9x12, 11x14, 13x16, and then the typical 90s 1822 kick. I've since upgraded the rims mounts on the 10 and the 12 to the Gauger aluminum rims bands. These make a world of difference. Until you get a chance to play a drum, hear the difference between this and the steel bands, you're going to be pretty amazed. I got the Dynamount, the floor tom cradle on the 16, so I can put that on legs. I don't need a stand for it. It's great. The 14 really doesn't get used that much. Just not a fan of 14 floor toms that often. Moving over here, here's the Signia collection. So this is actually the second Signia kit that I've owned. First one I bought back in early 98 was Topaz, and I had that for 10 or 12 years before I moved it on. These are pretty cool. The cherry wood finish. And this stack here is all the rare traditional or standard depths. So we got 8x10, 8x12, 9x13, 10x14, and those are sitting on top of a 16x22 bass drum. And then over here we got 3 snares, the 2 matching wood snares, the 5.5 and the 7x14, and then the 7x14 brass, which earlier on in production, this was not considered a Signia. It just happened to have all Signia hardware, but in the later Rebound catalogs, I believe, or maybe it was the Pro Series catalog around 98 or 99, they actually did start referring to these drums as Signia brass. So there's a little tidbit of information for you. Those guys are sitting on top of a 16x16 floor tom on legs, and that's on top of a 16x20 bass drum. Love these drums. These things sound absolutely phenomenal. Another interesting factoid about the Premier or the Signia snare drums. When I ordered my Topaz kit, or when I bought my Topaz kit in February of '98, I ordered a snare because the one was not on hand, and I ordered a 7x14. And as we all know, in a lot of the catalogs, they were pictured with the heavy die-cast stress hoop. And I was very upset when the drum arrived and it had triple flange tubes like these do. Come to find out, the very tail end of 97, very beginning of 98, Premier changed specs, and they no longer offered that hoop on the Signia drums, on the Signia snare drums. So chances are, if you find a Signia snare with the flange tubes, and you know it's an actual Premier hoop. I don't know if I can get it to show up on the video, but there is, maybe I can get it to show up on the tom. There is an ever so slight line in this vertical face of the hoop. It looks a little convex, and you'll see a little line in it. Again, I don't know if the camera's picking it up. So those are the TR8 triple flange steel hoops of that era. I believe they're 1.8 millimeter. Could be 1.6. Information's a little tough to find on that. Anyway, so if you do see a TR8 hoop with that little line on it on a Signia snare, that very well may be original to the drum. And that would mean the production on that drum falls, again, tail end of 97 through the end of the Signia series, sometime around 2000. So anyway, my head is full of these interesting little factoids. So there's the Signias. And over here, it's the wall of Genista. The Topaz Signia kit that I referred to earlier actually got traded for the start of this collection. So I've since bought, sold, and traded a lot of drums from that original set. I think the 16 by 16 I still have came from that kit. I can't recall what else. It's been quite a long time. This is a shell bank that has been in the making for the last, I would say, 13 years. So starting off over here, down here is a 16 by 20 bass drum. And right now I have this set up. I pulled the spurs off, and I have some Ludwig Atlas mounts on here. Took the what would be the front, the reso head off, and I use this as a gong bass drum. So that's a lot of fun. I'm not a big fan of 20-inch bass drums, and especially this one. It just does not tune down, for me, low enough. But it works great for my application as a gong bass drum. Moving up here, this is a 15 by 13 power tom, and it's the only, I'll get into that in a minute. So I've got this one set up again with the Dynamount Gauger rims cradle for the floor tom. So I'll take that out when I want to use the Genistas in a smaller environment. It's a fun drum. And up here we got snare drums. So these two are the 5.5 and 7 by 14 Genistas, matching damask red. And this guy up here is a 5.5 by 12 that I built out of a spare power tom shell. Darn near every Genista kit in the 90s had a 12-inch power tom, whether it was the fusion kits or the standard kits. There was always a 12. So I had a spare one laying around and ran it through a table saw, took the shell down to 5.5 by 12, and then I actually ended up having Chris Hewer from Hewer Drum Labs do the finish work on it. There were some holes that needed to be plugged. They're hidden underneath the lugs right now. You would see it if I flipped them over, but it's all built using period correct Premier parts. So we got the 610 throw off and the butt end over here. These are TR8 hoops. This bottom hoop has you can see it's got the gate cut out. That actually came from an XPK soprano snare, because they were making those hoops the same way that they were making the hoops for the 14s, with the gate cut out for the quick release butt end to the 610 throw off. So that was a pretty genius design, the 610, with that detachable butt there to get the wires out of the way while you made a head change, and then you didn't lose your settings. So great job on that one, Premier. Moving over here, we've got a stack of the harder to find traditional sizes, standard sizes. Although this one up here on the top, that one kind of goes both ways. That is an 8x10. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. This is an 8x8. This is an 8x10. So 8x8 technically falls into the Power Town category, but it goes right nice in front of an 8x10. We got an 8x12, 9x13, 10x14, and those are all sitting on a 16x24. I'm sorry, 16x22. Moving over here, we've got the Power Toms. We got 9x10, 10x12, 12x14, 14x16, and those are all sitting on an 18x22. And then last stack of drums here is the beef. We got a 14x14 floor tom, 16x16 floor tom, 16x18 floor tom, and those are sitting on top of an 18x24. So yeah, so these drums here, this is almost every size that they made in the Genista line. I am missing the 13-inch power tom, the 16x24-inch bass drum, the 18x20-inch bass drum, and the 16x18-inch bass drum. So it would be fun to have them all at some point, if nothing else, just to say I have them or had them. Most of these I do gig with on a pretty consistent basis. And a couple interesting things about these. The 16 and 18-inch floor toms I upgraded to the, I believe that these are the, and don't grill me too bad on the model number. I think these are the 0028 mounts with the matching memory collars. I got these from Peter Hopkins. So, hiya Pete, hope you're doing well. I just needed something, a scenario, because these get set up and torn down several times a week. Needed the memory collar option on these, so it made things a little quicker. Getting back to something I was saying earlier, I almost started talking about the badge on the 15 over here. Some people know this, some people don't. There were actually 3 different P badges through the 90s era here. The Genista started in 94. 94 was actually the tail end of the use of this badge with the slant logo. We kind of refer to that as the Yamaha era Premier logo, or the slant logo. So this would have been, this 15 was early production. This is the only drum in this shell bank that has that badge. The rest of them, in fact, the two 14-inch snares have the 2 other 90s edition badges. So this one here where it says Premier Percussion, and then this one here just says Premier Made in England with the dotted I logo. This would have been the second badge following the slant logo badge. So this one, talking with buddies on the Premiere pages, I think we kind of figured that this is somewhere between 94, 95 through, I'd say 97, 98 maybe. And then this is the final badge that they were using at the tail end of the 90s. So I sold many, many, many drums that had these badges on them. APKs, XPKs, Mark I Cabrias, Genistas, a lot of drums went through the store that I was working at the time. So yeah, there are the kits, and we'll wander over here real quick and look at some snare drums. These are some of the more vintagey Premier drums. We got a from, we'll start on the left. This is a PD 6021, I believe. Sorry, the lighting is kind of terrible over here. So this is an 8 lug, chromed aluminum, beaded shell. I saw this drum in the Selmer catalog when they were distributing Premier in the US in the late 70s. It's got Beverly lugs on it. As far as I know, this was a built for the US market drum. It's got the 632 throw off on it. This one I kind of refer to as like the happy medium between a Ludwig Superphonic and an acrolite, because it's got the chrome-plated aluminum shell like a Supra, but it's got 8 lugs like an acro. So very fat sounding drum. Sounds really cool. Next to this guy, we've got a 1035 from the early 80s. I jokingly say that this drum out-Supras my Supra of a similar size, which is also an early 80s drum. So this is a steel shell. This thing it's just a great rock drum, great rock snare. So, and you can find these things really cheap. Next to that, we've got a couple of the 2000 range drums. We've got a 2000. This one's got some pitting, and I need to find a new internal casting, I think, for one end of the throw off. It's not quite tensioning up the way I want it to, but it sounds pretty cool. And this is probably my favorite aluminum snare. It's the 2003. Got this a couple years back. It was the first non-90s Premier snare I ever bought, and it freaking rocks. It I think it outdoes a Ludwig 402 just hands down. Again, 8 lugs, nice and fat, and those low profile die cast tubes are just so nice, so nice. Let's jump up into the 90s. Well, we'll jump up here real quick. So this was an interesting drum I found off of Reverb. Got a really good deal on it. I mistakenly posted it and referred to it as a projector. Got excoriated by a few people. No, just kidding. Appreciated the help. It is a 2032. It's a 6.5 by 14 birch with beech re-ring snare. So it's projector shell, I guess you would say. So this thing came to me with a really tore up stress hoop on it, and I actually was able to find a local plating shop that was able to strip it and replate it, and it turned out really nice. What I had found out is when you chrome plate aluminum, not everybody does a coating of copper in the mix. So this hoop originally, and probably all of them I'm guessing, were nickel plated over the aluminum and then chromed over the nickel. Saved a couple bucks. So I paid the extra money to have the copper put on prior to the nickel and then the chrome. And I was assured by the plating shop that that will not pit out the way it did before. So time will tell. Now we'll jump down to the shelf here with some of the other 90s drums. Oh gosh, I'm terrible with numbers. So we got the piccolos, the 4x13 and the 4x14 birch 8 lug. This was the 2044. This is either I think this is the 2034 or the 43. I'm a dyslexic or something right now. We got another Genista in the natural wood finish. I got this one set up with a S-hoop on the batter, a CS batter head, kind of going for that Gavin Harrison thwack, throaty sound. I love this drum. I think the 5.5 by 14 Genista snares are very much underrated drums. Those things can do just about darn near anything you want them to. Love it. The natural birch finish was not a catalog option on the Genista, and I bring that up because again, when I was working for GC, that's Guitar Center in the 90s, late 90s, it was my understanding we were selling these, and I was told that that was an exclusive thing that they did for Guitar Center. They just ran off a bunch of these in natural birch. So maybe somebody else has some more information on that. That's the story that I know from, like I said, my time working there. So, and I'm sure everybody's curious about this one. Here we have a Mark III HR9. So as maybe most people know, there are 3 different versions of the HR9. The first one has the birch inner shell, brass outer shell, and it has the stress hoops top and bottom, and it's got the parallel throw off like the 2000s. The Mark II version had just a brass shell. Again, had the cast hoops top bottom, but it had the 60-42 throw off like this on it. That was actually one of the first Premier snares I ever owned. I had one of those a number of years ago. So the Mark III version, same thing. It was just the brass shell. They did flanged hoops top and bottom. So this is actually the cast hoop off of one of the Signia drums, because I just like the sound of the Signia drums without the cast hoop. So I'm keeping this on here for right now. The Mark III version had the 610 throw off on it. All the Genistas and the Signias. So this one is a fairly, I think I got this in the last year and a half. So hasn't seen too many outings, but hopefully that'll change this year once everything kind of gets back to normal. So yeah, there you have it. This is the Premier section of my collection. So one other drum over here real quick. It's this is a PD 6033. Again, it was a Selmer era US market drum. It's the African mahogany shell, like my my B202 kit. So the finishing on this one is kind of trashed. There's a spot on the wrap here where the top layer is basically just chipped off. So it's the way I bought the drum, and it's starting to get, there's some of these cracks running kind of vertically on the drum, and it's getting that brownish, goldish, brownish, greenish spotting all over that you see with some of these older sparkles. So this is going to be a project coming up. I'm going to strip the wrap off of this, see what that mahogany shell looks like underneath it, if it's worth trying to clear coat that, or if I'm going to end up just rewrapping it. I have some white marine pearl wrap that I've had sitting around for, gosh, well over a decade. Maybe this will be a nice drum to put that on. So we shall see. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed seeing these, and hopefully my rambling was tolerable, and hopefully maybe there was some interesting little tidbits of information in there. I just love these drums. You know, when I was working at GC, you know, we probably sold just as many of these drums as we were selling high-end like DW at the time. Once people would sit down and play these drums, whether it was the maple, whether it was the birch, if they were truly shopping with their ears, a lot of times they landed on these drums. So, and I still put them up there against just about anything else that's made today. So, and that's not knocking any other manufacturer. Everybody makes some really outstanding stuff. But yeah, 90s era Premier stuff will always have a very special place in my heart and in my musical background. So anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.